It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the movies of November 23rd, 2005. Well, technically November 25th, but Thanksgiving weekend, and happy Canadian Thanksgiving. It actually is not close to the day I'm recording this, but we're about a week or so away from Canadian Thanksgiving in general, so it kind of works out here. Just don't forget I said anything. I just don't know why I said that, but anyway, we're looking at Thanksgiving weekend 2005, and a lot of notable movies this weekend. We have a remake of a classic 1968 movie was basically made because Cheaper by the Dozen was such a success for Fox, so Paramount decided to make one of their own. But we also have the film adaptation of the Broadway hit Rent. We also have Ryan Reynolds as as a guy in the friend zone whose biggest competition was Chris I was going to say, I can't remember the character's name from American Pie, but Chris Klein from American Pie. But we also have Usher falling for Emmanuel Shariki, whose father is Chaz Palminteri in a movie. Criminally underrated movie with John Cusack and Billy Bob Thornton, and George Clooney's Oscar-winning film that he starred in, along with a cast that also includes Matt Damon and directed by the same guy who wrote Traffic. But let's get to the biggest new release of the entire weekend. It is Thanksgiving weekend, so bring on the family films. And we have one here that is only exists, like I said, because Cheaper by the Dozen was such a success. Let's take a look at the remake of Yours, Mine, and Ours. By the way, it's a Nickelodeon movie, so this actually fits in perfectly with what I'm about to talk about.
Christina are opposites.
Cheerleader.
Right.
Hey, forget about it. He's cute, but totally shallow. Maybe he is your type.
And suddenly,
This is my crew.
These are my kids.
sisters.
No way.
This Thanksgiving, two families,
What are you doing? Webcast.
one house,
Is that my shirt? Take it off.
no escape.
Why do I suddenly feel like I'm in prison? Fashion place cut up with you?
Yours, mine, and ours. Rated PG. In theaters tomorrow.
Just watch the last one.
Kids. Two parents. And a kid. Tomorrow. Get crazy. Hit the brake! Hit the brake! And go wild. Yours, mine, and ours.
This is fun.
Rated PG. Starts tomorrow. Only in theaters. Tomorrow, when the parents are away, two words, hard and tea. The kids will play. Yours, mine, and ours. PG starts tomorrow, only in theaters. Today, it's Sister versus Sister.
You are so dead.
They're going head-to-head in the ultimate sibling rivalry. This is gonna be good. Yours, mine, and ours. Now playing only in theaters.
So yeah, like I said, since Cheaper by the Dozen was such a big success for Fox, Paramount looked at this and said, well shit, we gotta remake something of our own. So let's see what we have in our catalog here. Yours, Mine, and Ours. Okay, we'll take this, but yeah, why not remake the other family comedy with a family with multiple children in it? By the way, Cheaper by the Dozen 2 comes out the following month, so timing, I guess, but you'll notice Paramount, MGM, Nickelodeon, and Columbia Pictures, because remember, Columbia Pictures they didn't really buy MGM, but they were releasing their movies through their studio after MGM shut down as a major studio. So, yeah, you had 4 different studios coming into form here, but also adding to the fact that between 2012 and 2016, Warner Brothers held most of the distribution rights to many of Paramount's catalog titles, and also that since 2013, Universal has had the international rights to Paramount catalog titles. So 6 different major studios have been on one movie. I was actually kind of surprised Disney didn't make their way into that category in there, but that's a lot of studios. I mean, it's like the Family Guy joke where Peter and Brian are in the theater and they're getting ready to watch the movie, and Peter's just like, okay, here's the movie, and that's just consistent opening credit sequences. But we're padding this out too much here. Let's get to this movie, Yours, Mine, and Ours. And like I said, it's basically the same movie as the 1968 film with the same name. When you have Frank Beardsley, played by Dennis Quaid, a widower of 8 children, running into a high school sweetheart, played by Rene Russo, it's as if 30 years have never passed. Helen, also a widow with 10 kids of her own, that include the 6 she and her husband adopted, feels the attraction as well. It's no wonder why they rush into marriage without telling their kids. True love can conquer all, right? Unfortunately for Frank and Helen, the families don't mesh quite as easily as the newlyweds had hoped. They probably should have seen the culture clash coming. The disciplined Beardleys run through things by the book. For the energetic and vivacious Norse, there is no book. And you can pretty much tell chaos and hilarity is about to ensue. I'm not reading the rest of this synopsis by the studio, because this is clearly something that the studio wrote in general here, but there's really not much more to digest in this one, because honestly, it's nothing but a ripoff of Cheaper by the Dozen, a bad ripoff of Cheaper by the Dozen. Like I said, they tried to one-up Cheaper by the Dozen by having this come out before the sequel came out, which is the much better movie, but that's not really saying a whole lot, because that movie is definitely a lesser film than the first film was. But that's how desperate Paramount was back in the day. And this was back when Paramount was going remake crazy with it, just remaking as many catalog titles as they can. They had Alfie the year before, The Stepford Wives, we had this year War of the Worlds, Last Holiday, Bad News Bears, The Honeymooners, Longest Yard, you name it. I mean, anything that was coming out, that came out within the last 40, 50 years from Paramount, they were taking everything and just remaking it for a modern generation. Some of them ended up being good, others not so much. But, yeah, for some reason, Paramount was just so obsessed with remaking every single classic movie from their library. And this is definitely one of those examples here. And this movie was nothing like its 1968 counterpart. This is just basically a bad 2000 family comedy that just plasters the title Yours, Mine, and Ours in order to make a quick buck off of it. I mean, you even see it in the trailer. Stuff you would see in other comedies, really bad comedies. You know, I didn't even show you the full trailer where, like, you know, he's talking to, where Dennis Quaid's talking to his corporal, played by David Koechner, and, you know, he's talking about, I fell in love with this girl, I spent all night Googling her, and the guy's like, geez, Frank, you Googled a chick? And Frank's just like, what if it was, what does that mean? And David Koechner's like, probably something dirty. It's just like, why? Just why? But then you realize that the director of this is Raja Gosnell, you know, the same director who completely pillaged and destroyed everything that was good about Scooby-Doo, and also will do the same thing in a couple years from now with the Smurfs. But, yeah, not much more to say about this movie, honestly. It was obviously made to cash in on the Cheaper by the Dozen remake that was released 2 years prior, and to get it out before the sequel came out. Yeah, it's a remake of the 1968 film in name, but this remake did nothing to distance itself from just being a Cheaper by the Dozen knockoff, and it's pretty lame in the process. It's been years, honestly, since I've seen the original Yours, Mine, and Ours. I don't even remember liking it that much to begin with, so that's another thing that Cheaper by the Dozen has over this movie in particular. At least the remake that also came after this was at least something better than this. I mean, it wasn't great, but I would rather watch that 2022 remake with Zach Braff and Gabrielle Union again than watch this lazy retread of an original, of a lackluster film in Yours, Mine, and Ours. And so much for the Rene Russo comeback effort. You know, she had Two for the Money the month before, and now this movie, yeah, you can pretty much see why that comeback didn't work out so well for her. But, so that is Yours, Mine, and Ours. Let's go ahead and move on to the next movie. Chris Columbus, the director of Home Alone, got a new movie out for the holiday season. You know, he had the 2 Harry Potter movies come out around this time of year. Can he find that success again by taking a Broadway musical hit in Rent and making it into a movie? Let's find out.
There are times when we're dirt broke and hungry and freezing, and I ask myself, why the hell am I still living here?
Hi, it's Mom.
And then they call.
525,600 minutes.
What's supposed to getting together tonight? Would you like to come with me?
In daylight, in sunsets, in midnight.
In one extraordinary year, 8 strangers became a family.
You always said how lucky you were that we were all friends. But it was us, baby. We were the lucky ones.
Revolution Studios presents the music, the passion, the movie.
I knew we'd hit it off the moment we met.
Rent, rated PG-13, in movie theaters November 23rd.
525,600 minutes. How do you measure a year in the life? I don't know. This is not that good of a movie, unfortunately. Based off the Broadway musical of the same name, it features 6 of the 8 original Broadway cast members reprising their lead roles, depicting the lives of several bohemians and their struggles with sexuality, drugs, paying their rent, and life under the shadow of AIDS in the grifty East Village of New York City from 1989 to 1990. And, you know, that whole idea of AIDS in general has been such a joke about this movie in general. Like, the year before, we had Team America World Police, and, I think you remember this little ditty right here.
Everyone has AIDS. AIDS.
Yeah. that was pretty much them just saying that everything about this movie in particular. But you got a really good cast in here. Like I said before, 6 of the 8 original actors are in this movie. The 2 new additions are Rosario Dawson, who replaces the original Mimi, Daphne Rubens Vega, who was actually pregnant at the time of the film's casting and filming, and Joanne, who's played here by Tracy Thoms, who was originally played by Freddie Walker, who had been the oldest in the main cast when the stage production premiered in 1996, and she stated that she was not offered the film due to her age, but did request that the producers cast an actress of African descent for the film. But most of the other cast in the movie is in here. You have Anthony Rapp, Adam Pascal, Jesse L. Martin, Adina Menzel. This is one of her big breakout roles for her after her work with Wicked in general. Taye Diggs, Wilson Jerain Heredia, and those songs in particular, I think, really gave me an idea that there's a possibility I could enjoy this movie. I thought the songs were pretty catchy, especially that song in the trailer. Like, I thought that was a really good song in general. And some of the songs in here are pretty good. There are brief flashes of promise in general with the film in general, but the story really is where the film really kind of falls apart. I mean, the movie, this is written by a good writer too, Stephen Chbosky, who wrote a really great movie, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, with Emma Watson, that came out in 2012. But then you realize he's also the same guy that directed Wonder and also the infamous Dear Evan Hansen, which that movie is an abomination. Dear Evan Hansen, just the play and the movie alone, the whole idea of that is really, really terrible. But this, I can at least see what Rent was trying to do. I got what they were trying to accomplish here. It's not a bad movie. It's just a movie that probably works better as a stage show, and it doesn't really do a good job of really bringing this into a movie landscape in general. And I feel like you needed to do that. You needed to go bigger, go grander, more epic. You need to do something like we saw recently with stuff like West Side Story and In the Heights. Like, you need to be on a movie set here instead of just doing a simple, smaller movie that looks like it's on a stage play. Like we want to go see this on a stage play, we'll just go watch the Broadway musical on a stage being played out. But like I said, it's not a bad movie, but just a movie that I feel like could have been so much more. The cast overall is really good. I think everybody in here does a very good job here. Rosario Dawson, Taye Diggs, Jesse L. Martin, Idina Menzel, Anthony Rapp, Tracy Thoms. I think they all do a very good job filling these characters very well. I think these are indeed very interesting characters that you want to get behind, but the movie, unfortunately, really does not have enough there in terms of substance to really give this movie the edge that I think it really deserves. The style overall is also a big problem too. Like I said, the visual look of the film, it really does feel like you're literally watching it on a stage. Now, if it was something like Hamilton, where it's a show that's impossible to get into, even if you try your hardest to get tickets, like the one that they put on Disney Plus, which probably was originally set to go to theaters, that would be something that would be really interesting to see on a big screen, because that's a show I've been wanting to see for a long time, and I've never been able to get to see it, but until I saw the Disney Plus version, which is really good, and was actually my favorite movie of 2020, but then again, of course, 2020 was COVID year, and yeah, not really that much of a stretch there, but here, yeah, like I said, it's not a bad movie, but just a film that you feel like should have been so much more. Especially with a director like Chris Columbus, you know. This is a guy who just made 2 Harry Potter movies. Like, he was able to work with a bigger budget on that film in general. But we're starting to get to see Chris Columbus's somewhat downfall as a filmmaker as a whole, you know. There was a time when Chris Columbus made a movie, you got excited for it because he had made a lot of really solid films. Smaller movies like Adventures in Babysitting, you know, Home Alone, which is a Christmas classic, and its sequel, Home Alone 2. Underrated stuff like Only the Lonely, Mrs. Doubtfire is a classic movie. You know, Bicentennial Man has a lot of ambitions to it, and of course the 2 Harry Potter movies. But then after this, it just kind of goes downhill from there. I Love You, Beth Cooper is a film that I liked at first, but I'm not going to lie and say it's a good movie nowadays, but we'll eventually get to that one. Percy Jackson and the Olympians is a kind of a lackluster film. Pixels is a terrible movie. The only thing I really liked from him in general was The Christmas Chronicles 2, which was a movie that he directed, where he wasn't the director on the first movie, but those movies in particular are very fun for Netflix productions in general. I mean, this guy has a lot of talent to his name, you know. Not only the stuff he does in terms of movies he's directed, he's produced a lot of classics. You know, he did produce Prisoner of Azkaban, he produced the Night of the Museum movies, Jingle All the Way, wrote a bunch of classic movies you're familiar with, Gremlins, Goonies, criminally underrated gems like Young Sherlock Holmes. He even made a television show in the 80s, Galaxy High, which is surprisingly really, really good. It's one of those shows that was produced by TMS, the company that did Tiny Toons and Animaniacs in the 90s. Like, he's done a lot of great stuff that is well worth checking out, and definitely is well recommended. So that's why a movie like this, you just feel like you expect so much more because of what this guy's done in the past, but it just felt like he was lackluster in this case, and it really does hurt the movie in the long run. And there's good ideas and a good cast and good music that could have made this a really good musical, but as it is, I kind of put this in the same category as something like The Greatest Showman. The Greatest Showman has a great soundtrack and a really good cast that can make it work as a whole, and great singing all around. But the story is really terrible. It's a really generic story when you really look at it, but everything else about that movie is well done. Like, also the visual perspective, I think, is much better than anything in this movie. But it really, a lot of similarities to Rent and The Greatest Showman definitely come into play in this case. But yeah, I was not a big fan of this movie, unfortunately. It really was a letdown for me, especially after seeing the trailers and seeing who was attached to it. I did expect so much more from it, unfortunately, but I didn't get it. But so with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is the romantic comedy Just Friends.
School. Chris Brander only wanted one girl.
I love you. Like a brother.
For sure.
Now, 10 years later,
I can put my arms around you.
and 100 pounds lighter,
You'll always be fat to me.
he's trying to get Jamie
I'm trying to look for my soulmate.
to see him in a whole new way.
Chris, you're gonna be fine.
Just Friends.
Raise your hand if your brother's a loser.
Short plot, Ryan Reynolds is simply this guy.
Oh no! I'm in the friend zone.
Longer plot, follows a formerly obese high school student played by Ryan Reynolds who attempts to free himself from the friend zone after reconnecting with his best friend played by Andy Smart, with whom he's in love with while visiting his hometown for Christmas. And the person that he's trying to upstage is Oz from American Pie. I finally figured out who the name of Chris Klein's character was. And Ryan Reynolds is dating Anna Faris in this movie, who's like a punk rock star in general. Well, she's like a rock star. I can't remember if she was a punk rock star or not, but this is written by Adam Tex Davis, who gave us such movies as his Swing Break Lawyer, which everyone remembers that movie, right? Monster Island. Yeah, that's probably not a good sign going forward. But this is directed by Roger Kumble, who has had certainly a very interesting stretch of films in general. Like, he started off with Cool Intentions, which was an intriguing film on its own merits, and then he did the sequel for DVD. And his last movie was The Bizarre, The Sweetest Thing, which is still one of the most insane R-rated comedies I've ever seen. But other than that, though, yeah, everything that this guy has done has not been that great in general, and sad to say, this is another one of those examples of a movie that really does feel like it should have been a whole lot better than it actually was. I mean, when I saw it back in the day, I did like it because I did feel like I was in the friend zone with several girls back then, and I probably still am. But I've come around to just accepting it in general. But in this case, I mean, there's nothing really all that hilarious about the movie in general. I mean, I expect so much more with the talent that they have in here. This was still Ryan Reynolds after Van Wilder. Nobody really kind of knew what to do with him in general, and it would take him a while before he would eventually become the Ryan Reynolds that we know him now, the Deadpool character that we've come to know and love from him, and why he's now become such a big superstar in terms of movies that he's made. But you feel like there's so much more that can be done with this film in general, but the film never really takes full advantage of what it could really be. It just feels like it's strictly staying true to the PG-13 rating in general that it has here, and just doesn't want to go too above what it should be like, and just go for the safe and marketable comedy. So I think a movie like this definitely does not need to go down that path. I feel like there should be so much more to it, and it just doesn't work as well as I think they wanted it to. I feel like there could be so much more done with this storyline in general. But as it is, it's just kind of like, it's not a bad movie, but just not a fully realized film in general. There's some things about it that do work in terms of some of the comedy. I thought got some good laughs, especially from Ryan Reynolds. But everything else, though, it goes pretty much exactly what you think of when you think of a rom-com like this. Yeah, it's one I remember liking back in the day, but now that I've seen it almost 20 years later, I realize that, yeah, probably wasn't worth it in the long run. So yeah, that's Just Friends. So let's go ahead and get to a movie that I really do like. This is probably overall my favorite movie of the entire weekend. A criminally underrated Harold Ramis film starring John Cusack and Billy Bob Thornton. This is The Ice Harvest. Stop! I just realized I gave you that build up for a movie that I'm supposed to get to after that, because I forgot the movie that came after that part that's actually listed before The Ice Harvest on this list, which I think is a damn shame, but I wanted to stop myself before I actually got into the review and realized, oh shit, I made a big mistake. No, before we get to The Ice Harvest, though, let's get to a lesser movie that came out this weekend, and much lesser than Just Friends, certainly. It's Usher making his feature film debut in The Mix.
From DJ to hero in one shot.
You saved my life.
Daryl's not a bodyguard.
He is now. Who's the new guy? Some of the family I got stuck with. I wouldn't mind getting stuck with that.
Usher in the mix. Rated PG-13 in theaters November.
Of course, this is Usher making his big leading film debut after becoming the big breakout music star around this time. And in this movie, he plays a successful DJ who manages to rescue a powerful mobster played by Chaz Momentary one night. And in order to repay him, the mobster gives him the task of protecting his daughter, played by Emmanuel Shariki. And I was really in love with Emmanuel Shariki in 2005. I watched Entourage when it was first coming on, and I first saw her in that show, and it was just like, I instantly fell in love with this girl because, I mean, she was very charismatic, charming. She was very cute. I mean, she's very beautiful. I mean, she's a very beautiful actress. I've seen her in a lot of stuff I really like in general, so I was kind of excited to see this movie. Plus, this is directed by Ron Underwood, who also did RoboCop. Not RoboCop. What the hell am I thinking of? Definitely not RoboCop, but he's made a lot of good movies in the past. Tremors, City Slickers, Heart and Souls, criminally underrated film in general. But then he also did stuff like The Adventures of Pluto Nash. And this was one of his first big theatrical releases since then, and I realized we might be in some trouble here. And sure enough, as I watched the film, yeah, this is not 1990s Ron Underwood. This is the Ron Underwood that's literally calling studios up saying, "Do you have anything for me? I'll take whatever money I can get." And the studios and Lionsgate says, "We have this movie with Usher. Give me it. Give me it. I don't care how much it is. I'll do it." And yeah, this is the end result we get from it. A film that is just so lackluster, so mediocre, so unfunny. And it just doesn't work all around here. It's a really bad movie. And it's not because of the acting. The acting overall, I think, is fine. I think Usher does a very good job handling a leading role like this. I do buy into his chemistry with Emmanuel Shariki. I think Chaz Momentary can be very fun in here, too. You also have Kevin Hart in here, Robert Costanzo, Robert Davi. There is some good talent involved in here, but it's the script. It's the comedy. It's just everything about it that just really kind of pushes off the good stuff that was working towards the film from the cast in general and from an idea that has some charm to it. Like has a good possibility of what could work in terms of a story like this, but the film itself just really is kind of lackluster. It just gives you kind of everything you expect in here. You can tell that nobody else was really putting into effort with the script in general, and everyone who read the script tried their best to make it do what they had, and it just didn't work in the long run. And it's a shame, too, because there is possibilities for what could work here with the talent that they have on board here, but this is, like I said, it's not the same Ron Underwood that was giving us really good movies in the early 90s. This is the Ron Underwood that was literally taking anything he could get, including TV movie adaptations, like he did, The Year Without a Santa Claus TV movie for NBC that came out the next year, which that's a mess on its own levels, and maybe we'll get to it on this show if I remember for the 2006 leftovers, because I know I won't remember because it won't be on the box office mojo list. But as far as this film goes, yeah, it's about what you expect from this director around this time period, and a film that probably should have been so much better with a better director and a better writer, but as it is, it just doesn't work. So now that that's out of the way, let's finally get to The Ice Harvest. Okay, let's get to The Ice Harvest.
Charlie just stole $2 million.
He looks like the cat that swallowed the canary.
But between the partner he can't trust,
Don't go squirrely over there. Stick to the plan.
don't poke the woman he can't resist,
Is he a rich child?
the friend he can't avoid, and the mobster he's trying to escape. Anybody but a lawyer would consider the consequences of getting out of town may be slippery.
Going somewhere, Mr. Argus?
The Ice Harvest, rated R.
I absolutely love this movie. This is probably one of the most underrated movies I have ever seen because nobody probably even knows what the hell this movie is. It really literally came and went. It didn't even make $10 million at the box office. And it was actually the last film ever released by Focus Features that was released on VHS because, of course, we were phasing out the VHS around that time to put the focus more on DVD. In fact, around this time, Revenge of the Sith did not even get a proper VHS release. That's the last Star Wars movie. that we thought we were going to get at the time. But in this movie, larceny, lust, and lethal behavior. In Iceborne, Wichita, Kansas, it's Christmas Eve, and this year Charlie Arglist, played by John Cusack, just might have something to celebrate. Charlie, an attorney for the sleazy businesses of Wichita, and his unsavory assistant, the steely Vic Kavanaugh, played by Billy Bob Thornton, have just successfully embezzled $2 million from Kansas City boss Bill Gerard, played by Randy Quaid. But the real price for Charlie is the stunning Renata, played by Connie Nielsen, who runs the Sweet Cage Strip Club. Charlie hopes to slip out of town with Renata, but as daylight fades and the ice storm whirls, everyone from Charlie's drinking buddy Pete Van Houten, played by Oliver Platt, to the local police begin to wonder just what exactly is in Charlie's Christmas stocking, and the 12 hours of Christmas Eve are filled with surprises. This is a really good movie, and probably a film that you would never expect from a director like Harold Ramis, who's made great comedies in the past. Groundhog Day, it's one of my all-time favorite movies. National Lampoon's Vacation, Caddyshack, Stewart Saves His Family, Multiplicity, Analyze This, Bedazzled. This was his last great gem as a director as a whole, and it's really hard not to see why if you watch the film. John Cusack and Billy Bob Thornton are absolutely terrific in this movie. Probably one of my favorite roles in the film is Oliver Platt, who has so many great memorable lines as this drunk buddy of John Cusack's, who marries his ex-wife, and he invites him over to Platt's character invites him over to his house on Christmas Eve for dinner, and he's coming there drunk and all that. All the family is there, and he's yelling at his dad, and just just so many great lines out of there. Unfortunately, I can't find most of those lines in general because clips of this movie are very hard to find on YouTube. And unfortunately, I can't. I would have to go and find my DVD and Blu-ray copy of it, which I probably could have done. But there's just so many great moments in this movie in general. Yeah, unfortunately, I can't find the clip I wanted to show you where it's a dinner scene. But Oliver Platt has this great line reading during this dinner scene where he's got food in his mouth and he's just bad mouthing his dad, and at the end of it, he just goes "hypocritical bitch!" The way he says this line. Like I've always said, if you can say a line and make me laugh out loud, you've won me over. But there's a lot of great scenes like this. There's a great scene where there's a scene where Billy Bob Thornton and John Cusack, they have this guy inside of this carrier case, and he's stuck inside of there, and he's able to shoot a gun through the case in general, and the guy's just "Is that you, Arglist?" And John Cusack's just "Hi, Roy." And the guy's name's Roy, and Roy's just "When I get out of here, I'm going to kill you. You know that, right?" And Billy Bob Thornton's basically telling him, "You're not getting out of there, pal." And then Roy's just going to Charlie, just "Let me out, Arglist. Your only hope." And Charlie's just "Actually, Roy, you just said you'd kill me a little bit ago." And then it just stops, and then Roy's just "I didn't mean it." And that whole exchange is so well done. It's so brilliantly funny. This movie's also not afraid to get dark, too. I mean, it's a dark comedy comedic thriller in a very fun way in general, and you really don't know how everything's going to turn out when it's all said and done. I never read the book this was based off. This is based off of a book of the same name, but it's a movie that I just absolutely love. I love this movie so much. It's a criminally underrated Harold Ramis film. Definitely a film that I feel deserves a lot more attention than it ever gets, because it's, like I said, it's a movie that is really hard to find clips for it online, and it wasn't a big hit, so there really isn't that much of a demand for it to be released anywhere, except if you find it quickly on Blu-ray and DVD, because when I saw this movie go on Blu-ray for the first time, I immediately leapt at the chance to have it added in my collection. I mean, I love this movie so much, I had to have it in my collection, and yeah, I can't recommend this one enough. Definitely seek out The Ice Harvest. It's a criminally underrated film. Definitely one of Harold Ramis' last great works as a director as a whole. Because after this, his last film he would ever do as a director was the infamously bad Year One. But this is a masterpiece of movie. This is a criminally underrated film. I love this movie so much. I can't recommend it enough. The Ice Harvest. Definitely check it out. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to our last movie that we have here. And that is George Clooney starring in Syriana.
Resource in history. It's running out, and 90% of what's left is in the Middle East. This is a fight to the death.
From the Academy Award-winning filmmakers of Traffic,
They want to kill someone that hasn't done anything wrong. Take the target out.
this is about our interests in the region.
It's like somebody put a giant ATM on our front lawn.
On December 9th,
Hey, we'll fight tough. We'll fight dirty.
what is the price of oil? Syriana, rated R, starts December 9th.
The movie is essentially a politically charged epic about the state of the oil industry in the hands of those personally involved in and affected by it. I'm just reading the smaller synopsis of this because there's like a novel for the actual synopsis that's on the IMDb page. But you get the idea of that here. It's basically Traffic, except this time around the focus is not on the focus on this is the whole idea of, you know, media houses, lobbyists, lawyers, politicians. You know, the storylines in this movie are basically centering around the events of, you know, what was going on in the Middle East. You have George Clooney leading an all-star ensemble cast that includes Matt Damon, Jeffrey Wright, Chris Cooper, William Hurt, Tim Blake Nelson, Amanda Peet, Christopher Plummer. Just a really phenomenal cast in here. This is directed by the screenwriter who did Traffic. Traffic was the Best Picture winner of It was not the Best Picture winner of 2000, but Steven Soderbergh won an Oscar for directing that movie. It was a great movie, by the way. It was a film I do really like a lot. I actually prefer that a lot more than I did the real Best Picture winner that year, Gladiator. But this movie won some Oscars, too, specifically for George Clooney, who got his first Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, one of several Oscars he was nominated for, because he also directed Good Night and Good Luck. Definitely the much better movie in general, but this is overall a really good film in general. It's a top political thriller with a strong cast, a really investing storyline here that has a lot of influence even in today's world in general, and just a really, really entertaining film all the way through. A really great film. If you like political thrillers, this is definitely one that's right up your alley. Can't say much more about this one that hasn't already been said. Syriana is a great movie. So with all that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies, and the next time we meet, we'll take a look at 2 more movies on the weekend after Thanksgiving. Usually not the best time to release a new movie, and you know, when they do release new movies, most of the time they're not good. They're not great movies. Case in point with the big new release that we'll have to look at next week, which is Charlize Theron and Aeon Flux. A very good idea in general, but the movie not so much. And like I said, you can already tell it's not a good start when the film is being released on the weekend after Thanksgiving and being dumped in front of all these big blockbusters that came out the week before. But we also have a movie I mentioned before, Felicity Huffman starring in Transamerica, so we'll take a look at both of those movies next time on this show. That'll be tomorrow. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode. Also, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notification button so you get updates on when new videos come out. We produce new videos here every day. For example, just in the last hour or so, the second part of my 70 Years of the Tonight Show documentary came out, focusing on Jack Paar. So if you want to go check that out, I'll leave a link to it in the corner there so you can go check that out. But you get the idea. We post new videos here every day. Like I said, hit the like, subscribe, notification button if you want to get updates on those. But with all that said, I am off. I will see you guys next time. And until then, as always, take care.